Okay. All right. Well, welcome to our workshop on upgrading Rails. Um, we're very excited to have you here, and we hope you're all safe and staying healthy and socially distancing and yeah, safe at home, hopefully. So my name is Ernesto Tackworker, and I am originally from Argentina, although I've been living in Philadelphia since 2015. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the founder of a small, sorry. You can actually find me on Twitter, GitHub with the handle eTackworker. I'm the founder of a small software agency. We like to work a lot with Ruby on Rails, Ruby, JavaScript, React.js, and all that jazz. About 5 years ago, we found ourselves doing a lot of Rails upgrades. So we're like, okay, how can we productize this? And basically, we launched a service called fastruby.io. And in this service, we help our clients upgrade their Ruby and Rails dependencies to the latest version. A lot of the things we're going to talk about today, we've basically been using for the past 5 years while running this service. And we wanted to share it with you, and hopefully you can use it to upgrade your Rails applications in a gradual way. Now, I'm fortunate because this time around, I get to do this presentation with two of my coworkers, Luciano and Claviani. So here's Claviani.
Hey, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. So my name is Claviani. I am from Brazil and I go by she and her. And yeah, I'm happy to be here to talk about Rails upgrades, which is one of my favorite topics. Next, please. Yeah. So I'm a senior software engineer at fastruby.io for the past 3 years, working with Luciano and Ernesto. Next. Yeah. One of the cool projects that I work for FastRuby is at Power One Remodeling, helping them with their upgrade efforts. Like they have one of the biggest Rails monolith in the world. And last year, for example, I worked with them upgrading from Rails 5.0 to 5.1. And this year, we are helping them to migrate from paperclip to active storage. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter with this @ClayCartu. And here's Luciano.
Hi, everyone. My name is Luciano. I'm from Argentina, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm a senior software engineer at FastRuby.io for about 5 years now. And Ernesto, next please. And you can find me on Twitter with, next please, with this handle.
Okay. Cool. Sorry about that. There are a lot of messages coming to Discord, which was a little anyway, it confused me a little bit there. Sorry. If you want to tweet about this or share any messages on Twitter, feel free to use the hashtag Rails upgrades. We're always looking for feedback and ways to improve this particular workshop. So why do we need the workshop, right? I mean, wouldn't like bundle update be easy? Like, shouldn't it be easy to upgrade our dependencies? Yeah, I mean, it should be easy, but Rails is one of the biggest projects in the Ruby world. So every minor release comes with a lot of features, a lot of changes, and a lot of moving parts, you know? And it saves us a lot of time in certain ways. But then when it comes to updating, it's complicated because our code is doing a bunch of things. There's a lot of complexity in our application code, in our dependencies, and sometimes, you know, bundle update means that we need to update 3 different dependencies which have their own upgrade process. So what we end up doing is, you know, When it comes to do bundle update Rails, we say, okay, we spend a couple of days, a couple of weeks, and we keep running into issues, and then we just give up and we say, maybe in the next sprint, we're going to do it. But that next sprint never comes, and we end up running Rails 3.0 in production. And that's not great, because then we're exposing our application to a bunch of problems, mainly security problems. So in this workshop, we want to show you a gradual way to upgrade. And it's going to be composed of 7 different steps. First, we want you to set up your application to basically make sure that you can bundle install and run your test suite. If you're using our sample application, we want you to set up Docker Compose, and Git, which will make it easier for everybody. Then we're going to introduce you to a gem that we really like. It's called Next Rails, which will allow us to set up dual booting for our Rails applications. So we will try to bundle install our application or our sample application with the next version of Rails. And I mean the next minor version of Rails. Then we're going to try to fire up the console. And that will help us exercise the configuration and the environments and the initializers. Then we're going to try to run the test suite with the next version of Rails. And if everything works fine and we get to do all these things with the next version of Rails, we're going to try to fire up the Rails server using the development mode. All right, so don't worry if you joined late, it's okay. There's a companion page for this workshop. You can go to fastruby.io/RC2021, and you can see all the steps over there. So if you see that any of the steps is taking longer for you, feel free to take the workshop at your own pace. You'll see that in the footer, there is the companion page in every slide, so no worries. Okay, so every time we explain a step, there's going to be the explanation as to why we want to do it, how we're going to do it, what we should see. And then there's going to be a moment where you can post your questions to Discord. Once you post your questions, we can address them. And after that, we will have some time to do the exercise. It'll be like a 5 to 10 minutes slot where you'll go execute code in your own environment and then report back. So when it comes to prerequisites, it's basically kind of like a choose your own adventure. You can use your own app if it meets our minimum requirements, or you can use our sample app. Now, if you came with your app and it does not meet our minimum requirements, we can't really help you, and we encourage you to use our sample app. If you are using your own app, we want you to be using at least Ruby 2.3. And we do that because Next Rails, the tool we're going to be using today, is not compatible with older Rubies. And we want you to be able to bundle install your current application. That's pretty basic. So we assume that if you have these 2 things, you can do the workshop. If you don't, you can listen to our steps to set up the application with our sample application. And if you have your own app, if you have a passing test suite, that would be ideal, but it's not required. Now, if you're using our sample app, we want you to have Docker Compose, and Git. If you don't have one of these things, you can go to our companion page and you'll see installation instructions for each and every one of them. Okay, so our sample application is a small Rails 4.2 application called Pecas. Pecas is a leaderboard Rails app for the Noco time tracking service. You can clone it, it's open source, so you don't need any sort of permissions, just clone it and CD into it. Then you're going to build the container with Docker Compose. And that's going to take a few minutes, but depending on your internet connection. Once that's built, you can run bin bash within the web container. And now every command that I talk about and we talk about during this workshop should be run inside your container if you're using our sample application. So when you run bin setup, it's inside the web container. And that's going to set up your development and test database. All right. And to make sure everything worked, you should be able to run rspec. So rspec spec should finish in about 2 seconds, and it will show a deprecation warning just to show that it is an unmaintained application, or it's, yeah, it definitely needs some maintenance. And you can see that it's a small application because the test suite finishes in 2 seconds, which, yeah, it's very fast. All right, so any questions so far? Let's see, I'm gonna check out Discord. Okay, I think there are no specific questions about this step. I know that there are like some very concrete issues in the Discord channel, but so right now we're gonna take 5 to 10 minutes to follow the prerequisite steps. Once you're done, it'd be great if you can just post a message to Discord and say like, all good, ready to go, or some sort of cool emoji like the, done check mark. Okay.
You can use the reaction here with thumbs up too, like this.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, it seems a lot of people are ready to go. We're gonna give it 5 minutes then to go on the shorter side.
I'm just curious, who is trying to run with its own app, or is everybody using our sample app? Cool. Both? Wow, that's nice. That's awesome, guys.
All right. For the next section, we're going to have Luciano explain the steps. And me and Claviani are going to be answering questions if you have any.
Are we ready to continue?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so before we start making changes that will get us closer to the next version of Rails, we want to know how outdated is our application. That way we can have a more clear idea of how far we are from the next version of Rails. So to know that, what we can do is to analyze our gem file. There are a few ways to do that, but the one that gives you the most precise information is by using the next Rails gem. This is a gem that we maintain at FastRuby.io, and it's a fork of the 10 years of Rails gem that was created by Jordan for the talk that he did at RailsConf 2018. To install this gem, you simply add it to your gem file like this. Keep in mind that you will need Ruby 2.3 or higher for it to work. And once you do that, you run bundle in the terminal to install the gem. So now that we have the next-race gem installed, we are able to run these two different commands. The first one is bundle report outdated, which outputs all your gems from oldest to newest with specific release details for each of the gems. It looks like this when you run it. And as you can see, for each of the gems shows when was it released, what's the latest version of that gem, and how old is that version. And the second command is bundle report compatibility, which will tell you what are the gems that won't work with the version of Rails that you want to upgrade to. In this example is Rails 5.0. Remember that we always want to do gradual version jumps, meaning that we want to upgrade to the next minor version of Rails. So for example, if your application is running Rails 4.2, the next minor version will be 5.0. When you run bundle report compatibility, it looks something like this. This is the output from the sample application. As you can see, the first part shows what gems will not work with that Rails version, but have a version of the gem that do work. And the next part of the output shows what gems will not work and don't have a newer version of the gem that is compatible. So you probably need to find a replacement for that gem. So now let's take a few minutes to install the gem and run these two commands in your application. Also, you can go to the link on screen to see any of the things that I just shared in the slides. And let us know if you have any questions.
There's someone asking what version of Rails we are using for this. For the same app, we are going to 4.2, from 4.2 to 5.0.
Are we having any issue with installing the gem?
Yeah, one thing we keep seeing issues is like you don't need to rebuild the container every time. We really encourage you to run bin bash with Docker and just execute all the steps within that same container instead of doing, Docker compose, run, whatever. We want you to be using a bin bash console inside the container and stay there. Don't come out, because then yes, you'll have to like continuously run things using the long Docker compose command.
Luciano, could you share the instructions again in the Zoom call? Just like the 2 comments, because there's someone asking.
Yes, they are on the companion page though, but I can share.
We'll be updating the gem versions.
Yeah, Felipe just shared the instructions, so we're good.
Good.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think this will be recorded. Will be shared later, right?
Sorry, what was the question, Claviani?
I saw someone asking if we're going to share this recording later. I believe so.
Yeah, I think they're recording this and they'll share it later. We'll also share the slides later today. All right, I think we're good. Do you want to move forward, Luciana?
Okay. Okay, so before we start talking about dual booting, I wanted to quickly mention about this other feature that NetTrace has for tracking deprecation warnings. If you are using RSpec, you can add this code to your test configuration file. Make sure you have the support directory in your application. And once you add that code, the next time you run the tests, you can add the deprecation tracker environment variable and set the value to save. And it will generate a file with all the deprecation warnings that were triggered when you run the tests. And yeah, this is very useful. And there are also some other values that you can pass to the deprecation tracker environment variable. So if you are interested on that, you can check out the README file in the NetTrace repo, which has more details on that. And if for some reason this command doesn't work for you, you can do this process manually. But it's always a good practice to have a list of all the deprecation warnings that happen in your application. So the next step towards upgrading your RAID application is setting up dual booting. This allows you to run your application with two different versions of RAIDs, the one that you currently have and the one you want to upgrade to. The main benefit of doing this is that you can easily see what parts of your code won't work with the next version of RAID and need to be updated. Also, this allows you to be able to ship smaller changes that will eventually get you closer to the next version of Rails. And the next Rails gem has a command for doing this setup. You can run next init, and this will do two things. The first one is that creates a symlink of your gem file called gemfile.next. This is necessary so you can have two separate gem file logs, one for when we run bundle install and one for when we run next bundle install, which I'll show you in a moment. And the second thing that next init does is that adds this useful method to our gem file that we can use in our code. We'll see how we can use this method after the next exercise. So now let's take again a few more minutes to run next init. If for some reason the command doesn't work for you, you can do those things manually. And in the link on the screen, again, you have all the details there.
Yeah, if by any chance the deprecation warning flag doesn't work with Next Rails, you can also do it manually. I mean, it's nice to have the shitlist.json file. But yeah, we noticed like with some version of Ruby, it doesn't work very well. So keep that in mind. Also, if you're running fast and you're in step 7 or step 5, please hold your questions until then, because it can be a little confusing in the Discord channel. Thank you. All right, if this step is complete, could you just post like a quick check mark to the Discord channel? All right, I think we can continue, right? Most of the people seem to be completing these simple exercise.
Okay, so now that we have dual boot set up, we can use the new next method that we have to wrap the erased gem and set two separate versions. One for when we use the next command and one for when we don't. Once we do that, we can go to the terminal and run next bundle install. If you are using the sample application, you probably see something like this. This means you'll need to add the next conditional that we just saw to some of the gems in your gem file. The bundle report compatibility command that we ran before will help you know what are the gems that need that conditional. So you basically need to do what we did here, but with some of the other gems. And once you fix your gem file with that, you can try to run next bundle install again. And if everything goes well, you'll see a new gem file .log file in the root of your application. So now let's try to do that. Let's run next bundle install. Right, we have to, I was reading some of the questions. Like I showed here, we have to do this same thing, but with some more gems. If you look at the output of bundle report compatibility, you will see that there are a few gems like SAS Rails that are not compatible with Rails 5.0. So for example, for that gem, for SAS Rails, you will need to apply this conditional.
Yeah, if you do next bundle install in the sample app, you should definitely see an error. It shouldn't just work. So make sure that if else is correctly specified.
Right, if you are using the sample application and you run next bundle install, you should see this output.
Yes, Ariel, you can try to solve the issue.
Right. Yeah, these 10 minutes are meant to address the issues with next bundle install.
When we are running the compatibility report, we saw that some gems are incompatible, so we're going to have to upgrade them. And so you need to change the versions of some gems to make it work. That one.
Right, here, if we go back to when we run bundle report compatibility, this is showing issues with SAS Rails, Coffee Rails. So those are gems that need the next conditional.
So
Try to add, yep.
Inside the if, I need to add those gems, the latest version of those gems. Exactly. You don't need to specify a version for cop Rails or the other gems. It's gonna work fine. Who was already able to run the next bundle install? Let's see.
All right. I posted a potential solution there. You might want to compare your own changes to the branch that I shared. Um, but if you're ready to go, just let us know in Discord. We just reached the 10-minute mark on the exercise. Yeah, I think the key in this step is to try to understand bundler telling us which versions do not work with our next version of Rails. So that's what we wanted to show you today. If you're doing the upgrade or this step with your own app, you are probably going to take longer than what we took for the sample application. And again, this is a very simple sample application.
Usually updating the dependencies takes like a lot of the upgrading time, maybe more than half of the time just updating dependencies.
All right. Feel free to keep asking the questions in Discord, but I think we need to move on to the next step if we're gonna reach our goal this today.
I'm just gonna quickly reply to Theo here. Maybe you try to remove the versions that you define in the if statement. Just add the gem without any version. Okay, so should we keep going, Ernesto?
Yeah, let's keep going. It's already past the 10 minutes we had for this exercise, so I can keep answering questions while you move on.
Okay, cool. So now we are able to install the gem, the next Rails, and to bundle install using the next. So if everything is working, we can start like doing some tests to, like for example, to run the console to see if we're gonna have any error, right? The purpose of this is for us to try to exercise things like the initializers, the configs, environment configs, and to see if we can boot the app using the two versions we have. So as you may notice, if you are within Packers and you run bundle exec Rails console, you'll be running the app with the Rails 4.2. And if you use the next, you'll be running with 5.0. And it's going to be the same if you're using a different app, it's just going to be the different version. So one way you check this is if you, inside the console, you type rails.version and you can check if you're running the version you want to, right? In a bigger app, you'll be likely run into a bunch of failures right now that you're gonna need to address. So now would be the time for you to create one story for each of the failing scenarios, right? Some of the failures we encounter may have a simple solution and some might take hours or days to fix. So now let's take a few minutes to try this. Let's try to run those two commands and see. I'm curious to know if you're gonna have any issue. So please follow step 5 in our companion page and let us know if you have an issue.
All right, how are we doing? People been able to fire up their consoles with the next version of Rails?
Yes.
Interesting issue what Anna reported there. A quick way to solve some of these issues is to skip the gem or some of the gems that are not, important. But yeah, like New Relic, you're gonna definitely need it in production, but probably until we get to the test part, it's not gonna be an issue. So you could do next bundle install and wrap the New Relic dependency with if next. I know it's kind of hacky and doesn't really solve the problem, but just for the purpose of moving forward with the workshop.
Ernesto, that was actually when trying to run the Rails console, when it's trying to start up the Rails console, so I'd have to do something else, but thank you.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Usually to actually solve those issues, you just have to go to the gems page and see what's the version that's going to be compatible with the version you are going to Rails. Right. Most likely, the maintainers already have a new version to work with the Rails. Right. If they don't, you can start to make the change that is going to be necessary and submit a pull request for the maintainers. Help them.
Yeah,
Ultimate?
one way to quickly see which version would be compatible with the next version of Rails is to say if next gem New Relic without any version, and then else New Relic with the version that you had there. And that would be like a quick way to say, okay, let bundler figure out which version of New Relic is compatible with Rails 6.0 or whatever you're using.
Ach stimmt, man kann einfach Audio ausschalten, ne? Habe ich auch gerade gemacht. Ganz kurz einen Moment.
Oh, I'm gonna mute. I think someone joined that was not muted. All right, should we move on to the next step?
Who else is ready?
All right, I think a lot of people are ready.
Yeah, cool. So moving on. Now we can, in the same way, we can start running the test suite, which will probably lead us to more things we need to fix to make all the tests to pass. So let's do the same process. To run in the current version, let's bundle exec rspec, and then let's run next bundle exec rspec to run with the new version, right? When running the test suite, you will likely run into a bunch of deprecation warnings, for example, right? And we should do like for every root cause of a deprecation warning, it should become a new story in our roadmap, the same way we did for the console errors, we can do for the deprecation warnings, right? It's something we need to fix or to address in the current version if you wanted to jump to the next version, right? So here are some of the packages you're probably gonna see if you're running with Impacas. So yeah, so let's exercise this. Since Packas is a small application, it should be fast, right? So let's take 5 to 10 minutes to run those two commands. And yeah, please follow exercise 6 in the companion page.
Right, and part of the exercise is figuring out why you're getting that SAS Rails error and what you will need to change.
If you're running your own app, maybe it's a good practice just to start with just one piece of the test, like just the spec models folder, and then move on to controllers and the other ones.
If you're running the workshop with your own app, you're probably going to find many errors. In the sample app, there's only one error. So that's why we only give it 5 to 10 minutes. Just a disclaimer about that. In a real life big application, you're probably going to find a lot of errors. One thing we forgot to say, if you're running the test suite for your application and it takes forever to run, we advise that you run your test for just models or the lib directory, something small so we can move on. We're pretty sure you can find errors even if you run a subset of your test suite. Also, if you want to share any of the root causes of your problems and it doesn't include anything confidential, we can give it a stab and you can take advantage of this mob programming channel. Just saying, while we have the time. I think we have another 3 minutes. Does anyone who's doing the workshop with their own app, have you been able to run the test suite with the next version of Rails successfully? I'm just curious.
Salim just posted an interesting question. If we can use like if next in any other place like initializers. What do you think, guys?
No, not because the method is defined in the gem file, but you could use the environment variable bundle gem file. Behind the scenes, next is basically setting the environment variable bundle gem file. So you could say like if bundle gem file equals gem file.next, then do this. But there's actually a better way, and I think it's what Claviani showed us in the Rails console. It's like if you do Rails.version, you should see the right version. So you could say like, if Rails version is this, then do that, and so on. Yeah, sometimes that is necessary if you want to fix issues for the next version of Rails.
Oh,
Yeah,
great,
usually
thanks.
one thing we sometimes do in our project is to create like a class that we have a method if next version, right? So we can use whenever you want. Sometimes you have to do some tweak in the controller or in the model. So you can have an extra class to do it, like a Rails upgraded class.
Yeah, I'm wondering here about this because I think I need to upgrade my RSpec setup or the RSpec initializers because all tests are not running at all because of some syntax issues or something.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, also if your next your test suite with the next version of Rails is not working, ideally we wanted everybody to upgrade their Rails subs, but if it's not working, then at least you know a couple of root causes that are going to be a problem, and you can start like creating stories in your pivotal tracker or whatever to tackle one at a time.
Yeah, thanks.
Who finished already? Cool.
Okay. Yeah. So to answer Ruth's question of whether your bundle exec test should work and the next bundle exec rate test should work, yes, we want both of them to work. So that means that you might need to add some conditionals to your application code or initializers to do like if Rails is this version, do X, else do Y. Cool. So yeah, I think we can move on. I know that some people are asking about the bundler audit gem, but that's coming up next, so we can move on, I think.
Well, so now if you were able to run the tests and run the application with both versions, we can say that you made it. I mean, you have your application is now running in the target version, right? So now we want to leave you some extra tips on how to stay current and make sure you don't run into deprecated versions anymore, right? The first one is to treat new deprecation warnings as exceptions. The default config of Rails is to treat they as log messages. But deprecation warnings in log are just noise. Nobody actually reads them. But when we turn them into exceptions, like making this change here, we are explicitly saying to Rails that it should raise an exception when final deprecation. Then all of a sudden we start caring about them. So we start addressing them as we go, and they won't be like accumulating in our application, right? Another thing you can do is to add this gem, the bundle audit, to your default rake task. This is a dependence that will help us to make sure to run a check every time we run our test suite, for example. This is the task that's provided by the gem. So we need to tweak your rake file to just add this, right? And this is what the task looks like, right? So it audits your app and will fail if new security vulnerabilities are found and patched in Rails. Right? So it's just a way to keep an eye on the changes you have, on the security risks you're having. And the third tip is to keep up with upcoming releases. Right? To do that, you can add the Rails main branch next version in your gem file. So we always keep an eye in the latest version changes. To do that, we can make this change to our if next conditional here. You see we are pointing the gem Rails to the Rails GitHub with the main version, main branch of the Rails, right? So one thing you can exercise this is if you set up your CI server to run two jobs, one with the version you are and one with the Rails main branch. So you at least you have this fading every time you know that your code is gonna break if you go to the next version, right? So like those are the 3 extra tips we wanted to do to leave to you. And yeah, now I'm giving back to Ernesto. He's going to talk about the process to wrap up the upgrade.
All right, thanks a lot, Claviani and Luciano, for going through all those steps. So yeah, we're gonna be here around for the next 30 minutes. I'm gonna share a few thoughts about this workshop and hopefully the tools that you can use in your next upgrade project. But yeah, feel free to ask questions after I'm done with this section. Okay, there we go. All right, so for anybody who follows the NBA, this is a reference to Joel Embiid and the Sixers. Trust the process. That's the main idea of this workshop. Is like, this is a workshop to show you a process that works very well for us with huge monoliths and applications that have been running in production for the past 10 years and more. So basically understand this process and apply it over and over again. And I know that some of us might be tempted to say, sure, I can just upgrade this Rails 4.0 application and take it all the way to 6.1 and just do it in one huge jump. Well, I would advise against it. That works well for tiny applications. And I'm assuming that if you're here, you don't have a tiny application to upgrade. So yeah, embrace the gradual version jumps approach. Embrace this gemfile and gemfile.next approach that lets you set up the minor version jumps. So the process is all about minor version jumps. So do 2.3 to 3.0, 3.0 to 3.1, and so on. And even when you get to 6.1, because we believe you can use this process to get there, keep the dual booting around. You know, make sure that you don't fall out of date, years out of date. Again, if you continue to use gemfile and gemfile.next, you can actually keep up with Rails main and compare your main branch with the Rails main branch to get an idea of like, okay, what's going to be broken when Rails 7.0 is released. So in every version jump, we want to do this over and over again. We want to make sure that you can bundle install with the next version of Rails. That will require you to tweak your dependencies to find a set of dependencies that will work with the next version of Rails. Make sure that your test suite works. And if you don't have a test suite, like start today. Like I think they say, like when is the best time to have a test suite? Like one is 5 years ago, and the other one is today. Start today if you don't have a test suite, because it will save you time when it's time to upgrade as well. And smoke test, because we work with a lot of code bases and there's no test suite that is perfect. So you will need to smoke test. You will need a staging server, and hopefully you do have a staging server to test these things with, because in this workshop we went over the development and the test environment, but we didn't get to the production environment. And for the production environment, the best way to do it is with a staging server. All right, and as much as you will have a long-running branch, maybe today you're starting your long-running branch to upgrade to the next version of Rails. But there will be changes in that long-running branch that can be shipped as backwards compatible changes. And you can get those to production tomorrow. And an example of this are, let's say, like deprecation warnings. Like Daniel commented that he fixed all deprecation warnings today. Well, each one of those changes can be shipped to production today, because the deprecation warning is telling you like, hey, you need to use this method from now on, because if you keep using this one, it's not going to be around in the next version of Rails. So by fixing it, you can ship it to production tomorrow, and that will take take you one step closer to your version bump release. So in our process, what we strongly recommend is tiny pull request over one huge pull request. And you will have a one huge pull request because there will be changes that will not be backwards compatible. And you do want to ship as many tiny pull requests as possible. And every deprecation warning you fix could be a tiny pull request. So keep that in mind. And yes, this is a very simple process, and there's a very simple iteration process where you tweak it, you test it, you merge it, and you ship. And the good thing about having tiny PRs is that you can quickly revert them and ship them to production, because there will be problems along the way. And it's much easier to revert a tiny pull request than a huge version jump PR. So just to sum things up and to wrap the workshop, ideally, some of you got your application to run the test suite and to run the Rails server with the next version of Rails, which is great. Like I'm surprised that happened, but that's awesome. The truth is that later, or the later releases of Rails, like Rails 6.0 and 6.1, and those version jumps have become easier and easier as the team has shipped, more upgrade-friendly changes. So that's awesome. If you did not manage to upgrade your application today, or you didn't even get to bundle install with the next version of Rails, well, maybe this gives you a roadmap to work on your upgrade. Okay, it will tell you, okay, what are the dependencies that have a problem? What is the code base that is gonna be the problem in the next jump? And you can create a story in Pivotal Tracker or an item in your to-do list, and maybe every week work on one of those things and get one step closer to the next version of Rails. And another thing that you get out of this workshop is a new tool for your tool build. Like even if Next Rails doesn't work and you prefer another gem to do dual booting, at least you will be doing dual booting. And it will be very, very useful as you are debugging weird behavior between Rails 4.2 and Rails 5.0, or if you're debugging a callback problem in the entire after commit callback. Like sometimes you will find dual booting super simple because you'll see a test suite work with a version of Rails, and then another test suite won't work, or another scenario won't work. And with one environment variable, you'll be able to quickly debug the internals of your application and the way it uses Rails. And another thing about dual booting is that we didn't even cover today is that you can even use it in production to basically do gradual releases. Deploy 90% or deploy changes to your application server so that 90% of your traffic gets serviced by Rails 4.2 and the other 10% gets serviced by Rails 5.0. You can do that with this particular technique. We didn't cover it today, but there are resources I'll share with you that you can use. And another awesome thing about this is that it will help you stay current. So you can go back to your team tomorrow and say, hey, we're going to use this technique. And when we get to Rails 6.1, we're going to keep this around. We're going to keep the test suite running in CI, testing again against Rails main. And that will save us a lot of time and future upgrades. Cool. So this is the third time we run this workshop, and we have incorporated a lot of feedback over the years. So if you have any feedback, feel free to share it with us on Twitter. You can send us a tweet over here, or you can send us a message through our contact form, or just post to Discord. If you're interested in some of this content about Rails and technical debt and stuff, feel free to check out our blog. It's fastruby.io/blog. And if you are interested in all the things that we're doing, both on upgrades and open source, we are hiring. So feel free to check out our jobs page. All right. Thank you. We have some room for questions now. Let's see. Oh, and we will share the slides after the presentation, so there will be more resources over there. Yeah, we have an unofficial GIF competition going on right now. So if you want to share your favorite GIF, we'll be happy to see them. Okay, so Theo asks about bundler audit. Are there any benefits over Dependabot? That's a good question. Do you want to take that one, Claviani?
Yeah, but I actually don't know. I always use it for the dependencies. I don't know. Have any of you guys used for something else?
Well, the only benefit I see over Dependabot is like, I don't know if there's a way to set up Dependabot to make your CI fail if you are exposing yourself to a security risk. I think the cool thing about the way that Claviani explained is like to run bundle audit and to have it fail if you have anything that's out of date, like you're missing a patch release for something. It will fail your CI. It will basically, someone submits a pull request and you're about to merge it, and CI is going to fail, and you're not going to be able to ship the pull request until you address the dependency. So it might be more strict, but I don't know if that's the best pro benefit there.
So it would basically prevent if someone adds a gem that's actually going to add like a security flaw to your project, right?
It will run bundle audit update in every pull request, so in your CI, and I think it's going to fail if there's a patch release or a security release that you haven't implemented in your gem file yet. I don't know if that makes it clear.
Yes, thank you very much.
Cool. Question from Robson about using dual boot in production environment. Yeah, part of the resources, we're going to include an article that explains how you can use the environment variable bundle gem file to deploy one version of Rails to a part of your application servers and the next version of Rails to the other application servers. The only problem with that approach, and like the biggest issue with something like that, is like you have to write some custom code to make sure that the sessions between the two versions are compatible. But yeah, you could use it to do a gradual rollout of your upgrade project. So there are two ways to roll out an upgrade. You either do one, okay, Tuesday we're gonna ship the Rails 5.0 upgrade to production. You merge it and you ship it, and you monitor your error tracking service. And then that's approach one. The other approach is like, okay, we're gonna slowly roll out for Rails 5.0 and just roll out 10% of our application servers to use this version of Rails. And yeah, you can use it to gradually roll it out and monitor the exceptions that you get.
I think that kind of answers the question for, I know, GBRL Custodio here. He's asking about what is the best pattern to rolling out the next version of your code base, right? And also how to catch up bugs earlier before releasing. That's basically it.
That's a good question by Richard Schneemann. Who does contract work on upgrades? Well, we do work on that, so thanks for asking that, Richard. But hopefully you can DIY it, so you don't have to talk to us. We do charge a lot for those services, and at the moment we are fully booked. But yeah, we offer those services.
Please visit our website, fastruby.io, to see more information about it. And also to check our blog. And we also have an ebook that we did with the upgrade for each one of the versions, like 4.1 to 4.2 and 4.2 to 5.0 and go
on. So John had a question about Next and gemfile.next. Yeah, I think one of the known issues is I know this issue, but I think I haven't reported it yet. But if you're using Next.js in your application, or if you're using Next.js in your system, there is going to be a conflict with the command next. So yeah, it should we should rename the next Rails command to like next underscore Rails to avoid that clash between those two tools. At the end of the day, it's just like the same as saying, bundle gemfile equals gemfile.next. It's just like a shortcut to doing that. But yeah, if you wanted to not use the next command, to be honest, like it's actually easier to set up CI to actually Bundler has support for bundle gemfile anywhere. I think probably starting with Bundler 2.0. So if you wanted to set up CI, we actually have a couple articles about how to set up CI to do the two jobs in Travis and Circle CI. Just Google those keywords. You can do it very quickly by just adding that environment variable to your CI job. You say, okay, if you're running the current version of Rails, just run as usual. And the next job, or to run the next set of dependencies, just do bundle gemfile equals gemfile next, and that will work. It would also, I think it will also work in Heroku if you're using Heroku and you set up that variable to do a deployment. Once you have the changes in production, you can probably use that to restart the server with the next version of Rails. Okay, sorry, I get a little lost with all the questions, but if you have any questions and we haven't addressed it yet, could you please post it to Discord again? Oh, cool. Yeah, good question. Boot is a tool by Shopify to do the same thing. So I don't think there's any big difference. I haven't really used Boot because we've been using Next.Rails ever since Jordan Rain published it. We forked the project because we needed it to support older Rubies for our clients. But yeah, as far as I know, Boot and Next.Rails both help you do dual booting with your Rails app.
I think Boot doesn't have some of the other features that Next.Rails has. I think the main focus for that gem is dual booting. But if you are only looking for a gem for dual booting, it should be the same.
Okay, I see some people typing, so we'll wait for their questions. Yeah, so Richard opened an issue in the Heroku build pack to check compatibility with gemfile.next? Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't really played with that, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. We can actually test this in one of our applications later today, and I can comment there later today, I think. And this meta question by Ilya, what microphone? I think this is a Blue Yeti that I have. Not really sure what Claviani and Luciano have.
I have the same.
Oh, mine is different. We didn't notice that, right, guys? It's kind of the same. It's not something of FastRuby, you know.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thanks a lot for being here. I think this concludes the Zoom call. If you have any questions later, feel free to post them in Discord. We're probably going to be around for the conference. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.